This story begins with a piece of leaked footage, supposedly it comes from a server that belonged to a place called the Ares Deep Science Facility, black site said to be operating 3 kilometers beneath the New Mexico desert. The timestamp is a little over a year ago. In the middle of the room stands a massive, 10-foot wall of reinforced concrete and steel. A man in a lab coat, Dr. Aris Thorne, places a small, faintly glowing cube, no bigger than a sugar cube, onto a pedestal. He gives a nod to his colleague, a young physicist named Eva. She takes a deep breath and starts walking toward the solid wall. And she doesn't stop. The footage is grainy, shot on a fixed security camera. It shows a sterile, white lab. Her body shimmers like heat haze on a hot road, and she passes right through the concrete as if it was smoke. For a split second, she's a ghost, a phantom inside one of the densest materials you can imagine. Then, she emerges on the other side, totally unharmed. The footage glitches, dissolves into static, and cuts to black. The file is labeled Project Chimera, Phase Test 7. Success. The Pandora's box. What if that footage was real? What if, in some hidden laboratory, shielded from the world by miles of rock and secrecy, a team of scientists finally broke the most basic rule of our reality, led by the brilliant but obsessive Dr. Aris Thorne. The team was a who's who of the world's brightest minds. They weren't just trying to study the universe, they were trying to rewrite its source code. The concept was that every particle in the universe vibrates at a specific frequency, keeping objects solid and separate. Your hand can't pass through a table because the atoms in your hand and the table are on the same channel, pushing each other away. But Thorne believed that if you could change an object's quantum frequency, you could make it dissonant with everything else. You could, basically, change the channel. The object would stop interacting with normal matter. It would become a ghost. For years, they chased the ghost in a machine. The idea that the solid world around us is more of a suggestion than a law. Not in theory, not on a tiny quantum scale, but in our world. They created a stable, visible object, that glowing cube from the video whose quantum state they could control. They called it phase matter. When activated, the cube, and anything touching it, could pass through any other solid object, like it was empty space. The test with Dr. Rostova wasn't just a proof of concept. It was turning a key in a lock we never knew was there. In their quiet underground lab, they had become gods of a new physics. They celebrated, totally unaware that they hadn't just opened a door. They had opened Pandora's box. The world of steel, concrete, and flesh. This is the story of that breakthrough. A story of how humanity unlocked the power to walk through walls, and in doing so, brought the walls of civilization crashing down. The Ares Deep Science Facility, as the story goes, was founded with one single, crazy goal: to engineer the impossible. Their work revolved around a completely fictional idea they called quantum resonance. After thousands of failed simulations, they finally did it. The ghost in the machine, the idea of walking through walls, sounds like pure comic book fantasy for a reason. According to everything we know about physics, it is impossible. So, is there any real science that even hints at something like this? Well, the answer takes us into the bizarre world of quantum mechanics, with a phenomenon just as strange, but way more limited. Quantum tunneling. Every time it just doesn't have the energy to break through. But on the quantum level, the rules are different. A subatomic particle, like an electron, doesn't have one single location. Its position is a wave of probability. Most of that wave will bounce off a barrier, but a tiny, almost infinitesimal part of it actually extends through the barrier. This means there's a non-zero, though fantastically small, chance the particle can just appear on the other side. It has tunneled through. Imagine you throw a tennis ball at a wall. It bounces back, but, and this is a huge but, it only works for single, subatomic particles over incredibly tiny distances. A person is made of trillions upon trillions of particles. Real-world quantum teleportation has been achieved, sending quantum information across cities and even to satellites. But this process doesn't move physical stuff. It transfers the informational state of one particle to another through a link called quantum entanglement. It's like faxing a particle's blueprint. Critically, this process destroys the state of the original particle. So you can't beam up a person, and you definitely can't use it to phase through a wall. The odds of every single particle in your body tunneling through a wall at the exact same time are so low that it is practically zero. You'd have to wait trillions of times longer than the age of the universe for it to happen even once. This isn't just a theory, it's a proven part of quantum mechanics that makes things like modern electronics possible. This often gets confused with teleportation. The scientists at the imaginary Ares facility didn't just use tunneling, they claimed to have controlled it. Their fictional breakthrough, quantum resonance dissonance, is the sci-fi invention that bridges that impossible gap. They dreamed up a way to make every particle in a large object act as one, tunneling together. They took a real, mind-bending quantum phenomenon and turned it into a superpower. This is where our story takes its leap into fiction. Before we see this impossible power get unleashed, just think about the implications for a second. What happens when secrets are impossible? When a bank vault is just a suggestion? If you find the line between science, fact, and fiction as fascinating as we do, think about subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you do miss our next exploration into the biggest ideas out there. The first key turn for every huge discovery, there's human weakness. At the Ares facility, that weakness was a man named Kellen. He wasn't a physicist. He was a mid-level systems tech, drowning in debt and desperation. He memorized schedules, security protocols, camera blind spots. The irony was so thick you could taste it. He was about to use a technology designed to make security obsolete to bypass the most secure facility on Earth. He made his move. The lab with the main phase matter sample was behind a meter-thick vault door of titanium and lead. Door his stolen Picard had no chance of opening. For months, he'd watched the impossible become routine on security feeds. He saw the tests, he understood the power of the cube, and he didn't see a scientific marvel. He saw a way out. The ultimate skeleton key. His fingers just sank into the titanium like it was fog. Vertigo hit him hard as his brain tried to make sense of what he was seeing and feeling. Silent, blind, cold, non-existent. He felt the dense structure of the vault door slide past him, through him, without a single point of contact. He was a ghost in the machine. When he stumbled out on the other side, he was gasping, not for air, but from the cognitive whip. The air in the sealed vault felt electric. There it was, the main cube of phase matter, pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. He grabbed it, the cold feeling of its power now flowing through his whole body. He walked back to the door and passed through it as easily as walking into another room, leaving the most secure chamber on the planet violated without a single alarm. Kellen was no longer a technician. He was the most dangerous thief in history. He could feel his own skin, but he saw his hand disappearing into a solid barrier. He kept pushing. Arm, shoulder, then his head. His plan was simple and desperate. He got to the vault, his heart pounding. From a shielded pouch, he took out a tiny shard of phase matter he'd managed to get his hands on, a piece thrown out after a failed test. It was no bigger than a grain of rice, but it was enough. He activated it with a small power cell and felt a weird, cold tingle in his hand. It wasn't pain, but it felt deeply wrong, like being disconnected from the world. He pressed his hand against the cold metal of the vault door. There was no resistance. The feeling of passing through was indescribable, a moment of total sensory blackout. The world without walls. Kellen's escape was the first tremor of an earthquake that would shatter the world. On the surface, he was a ghost in a world built of stone and steel. His first target wasn't a military base, but something more fundamental. A federal gold reserve, a fortress built to survive a direct attack. The contents of Vault 713, one of the most secure rooms on Earth, had just vanished. No sign of entry, no alarms. It was as if the gold just decided to not be there anymore. Security experts were baffled. Governments panicked. This was the total annihilation of security. The very idea of a locked room, a safe, a border, it was all meaningless. What good is a trade secret when a rival can walk through your lab walls? What does national security mean when any agent can stand in your most secret briefings? The world's financial markets, built on the idea of secured assets, went into a gold, the ultimate store of value, was now as insecure as a password on a sticky note. To Kellen, it was just another wall. The news reports were first confused, then terrified. The chaos spread. When every classified file from a top-secret Pentagon data center appeared online, the world finally got it. This wasn't theft. People scrambled to convert assets into cryptocurrencies, anything not protected by a physical lock. But even that was a temporary fix. The servers running the blockchains, the data centers holding the internet's secrets, they were all in physical buildings. Buildings with walls that were now just a suggestion. Kellen unleashed a world without secrets, without privacy. A world where possession was no longer 9/10 of the law. He hadn't just stolen gold. He had stolen the very concept of mind. Panic created a bizarre new economy. Physical wealth was now a liability. The unraveling, the initial chaos was only the start. The real horror of phase matter wasn't what it did, But what it was, Dr. Thorne and his team, now in a desperate lockdown, confessed to stunned world leaders the terrifying truth. The tech was unstable. They hadn't perfected it. They had just barely contained it. The cube Kellen stole was a prototype that had never passed long-term stability trial. It didn't just let an object pass through another. It left a scar on the fabric of every time Kellen phased through something, he weakened its fundamental quantum bonds. The effect was cumulative. A wall he passed through once might be fine, but a street he phased across over and over would begin to lose its very integrity. The effect began subtly. Reports of strange architectural glitches. A support pillar on a bridge in Tokyo would flicker, turning transparent for a moment. Objects would spontaneously lose their solidity. A car would sink halfway into the asphalt. A skyscraper's foundation would turn intangible, causing the whole structure to collapse. The world was no longer reliable. The ground beneath your feet might not be there in the next second. Kellen, the man who just wanted to escape his own life, had accidentally started to delete the source code of reality. The problem wasn't security anymore. It was existence. The ghost had become a virus, and the machine was crashing. An apartment building in London where residents on the 3rd floor would suddenly be looking into the 4th, the floor between them having blinked out of existence for a few seconds. At first, these were dismissed as hoaxes. Then, the decay became undeniable. The so-called quantum resonance dissonance wasn't a clean process. It was messy. They called it reality decay. The laws of physics were fraying. It started where Kellen had been, but it was spreading. Kellen's ultimate fate is unknown. Some say he was consumed by the instability he unleashed, his own atoms losing their coherence until he just dissolved. Others believe he's still out there, a phantom haunting a world that's slowly coming apart at the seams. His story, and the story of phase matter, is a fictional but powerful cautionary tale. You cannot walk through a solid wall, and teleportation is for information, not people. The science of quantum tunneling is real, but its effects are locked in the microscopic world. Still, the story of Ares forces us to ask a question that all science has to face. Where's the line between discovery and destruction? As we keep digging into the universe's deepest secrets, we have to move forward with not just ambition, but wisdom. It's a chilling thought that maybe some doors are locked for a good reason. When any boundary can be crossed, what is anything worth? It's just a story, but the question it leaves us with is very real. Are there some truths we're better off not knowing? What would you do with the power to walk through walls? Let us know in the comments below. In our world, the laws of physics are holding strong. A world without walls is a world without definition, without certainty.